This is Nursing Uncensored. I'm your host, Adrianne Benning, and I invite you to listen in on conversations I've had with real nurses about the crazy and wonderful lives we lead. This podcast is meant to create laughter in addition to serious discussion, and nothing is off limits. We're always honest, but we're not always safe for work. Please listen responsibly. Welcome to Nursing Uncensored. I am here today with a really a juicy and important topic. I am here today with Desiree, and Desiree and I are going to talk about some, actually a lot of stuff today. We've got a lot of good things on the roster. Will you please introduce yourself? Welcome.
Well, thank you. My name's Desiree. I've been a nurse about a little over 5 years now. I currently work in a cardiothoracic intensive care. I've worked there for about 4 years. Before that, like Adrianne, I worked in a pulmonary step-down unit for about a year and a half, maybe. But yeah, before that, this was my first nursing job at this hospital. I've never really had any nursing jobs before that. I had a med aid job before, but that was it. Other than that, I bartended. This is on a whim thing for me to go to nursing school. I have a different bachelor's degree in health science, but it's, I really never had a goal of what I was going to do. And then I, on a whim, graduated, couldn't find a job, and I was like, I'll go to nursing school. Applied and got in, and now it's now. So
welcome. Yeah, everybody has a different way that they came in, and it doesn't matter what you did before. I used to work in a deli, so we all have these things that we did in our pre-nursing lives, but once we get here, it's amazing the things that change us and the things that
definitely
and the things that we do and the experience.
And it's I would never imagine doing anything else now.
Yeah, same. There's a point in my life where I never ever would have dreamed I would have become a nurse, but now I'm what do you know? I would never do anything else. As much as I bitch and complain about everything.
I know, right?
I still really love it. And I feel like I say that at the end of every episode. I'm I know I sound really upset, but I wouldn't do anything else. This is my passion. So yeah, welcome. We have kind of a heavy topic today, but I think we don't have to be super heavy with it. This is a really important issue, and it's something that I've seen literally everywhere I've ever worked. And we want to talk about bullying and lateral violence in nursing. I've wanted to cover this for a long time, but I've always felt ill-equipped to talk about it. I feel I need to do research, or I need to come up with a list of resources. But really at the heart of it all, I was a bullied kid. And so bullying takes this weird, visceral, nasty gut feeling that I get when I think about it. And I even feel that way when I catch myself engaging in I got swept up in gossip, or I got swept up bitching about something at work, and I have to step back and be whoa, what am I doing? Would I say these things in front of the person? You have all these experiences in life, and then we get to be adults and we think everybody is going to behave themselves and be professional and be fair, but that's
no, we don't.
No. And we're all guilty of it. I think that
no one's perfect.
No,
and no one can sit there and say that they've never been a victim, or they've never engaged in, or they've never said something off color, or, whatever, everyone's done it. So it's not to say that everyone's the problem, but, there is definitely those, few bad apples out there that really just take the cake sometimes.
And we often work in a really high stress, highly emotionally charged environment. And so, while every job has those people that are difficult to get along with, or maybe are a bit on the bullying side, really there can be some very legitimate and intense patterns in nursing. And we've created this outline. You did way more than I did. And I love the information I do want to talk about it because it's a great resource. We're not going to conquer everything in this episode, and we're not going to have all these solutions, but we're hopefully going to, but we can at least try to recognize what it is, whether or not we're doing it, how we see it in the workplace, on the unit, in the clinic, in the, wherever your setting is. So we can recognize it, not only so that we can, if we start to fall into these patterns, we can go, oh, wait, I just read something about this, or I just talk to someone about this. I'm trying not to do this. We're licensed, educated professionals, right?
Right. And we should know how to act, but apparently sometimes we don't. So,
right. So the American Nurses Association defines bullying as repeated, unwanted, harmful actions intended to humiliate, offend, cause distress in the recipient. Some examples that we have listed here is like always giving the new nurse the job where they have to like go in and clean up poop or clean up something undesirable, or getting like, that, oh, that one nurse that doesn't like you is charged today, so you're probably going to get like a really heavy, shitty assignment. Or just like the locker room talk, the like making fun.
Or
or
the way you look in a isolation gown. I mean, stupid stuff that obviously they don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's like a new level of insecurity for me. People make fun of how you look in isolation gowns.
I don't know, because I know I look stupid, but
I know I do too, but I was like, oh my God, there probably is. But these are patterns that unfortunately we like learn when we're young. And for some people, they never get away from that mindset. And for some of us, it's just that like bandwagon mentality. It's easy to climb on the gossip train when everybody else is too. So, so that's kind of like the official definition of bullying. And then there's also professional incivility, which the ANA
I feel like happens way more.
Yeah, this I feel is the stuff that's like harder to put your finger on, or like you're being disrespected, but like you can't like how do you complain about this, or like how do you quantify this? It's that kind of stuff. Right. So like incivility is like one or more rude, discourteous, or like disrespectful actions that may or may not have negative intent, right? So like the very first thing on here that you put on here, which is so true, and oh my God, I had $1.
Oh my gosh, no. If I could do like a study on how like on this, I think I would probably win some kind of award, but I don't even know how to do that study. So
what is it? Tell everybody. What is it?
Shitty attitudes in report.
Oh my God. The eye rolling, the sighing, the talking over, like, well, it was like that. You know what?
Yeah. Or like don't even worry about it. I'll take care of it.
Yeah. Or asking you something that's like, so
totally doesn't even matter.
Doesn't matter. Is really obscure. Like what, like some lab.
What was their potassium 8 days ago? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why?
It's like, well, the orders are right there on the screen in front of you. Like,
yeah, I know. Like, and so are the labs and the staff that want them. And you're trying to do like bedside report, and they're like, are these lines good? Because they're not labeled. I just didn't know.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well, they were just admitted
when I did that. So I was so busy. Chill.
Yeah. So it happens like shift to shift. It happens like floor to floor. ED nurses have very different priorities than like ICU nurses. So like when someone is getting a report from ED and they're like annoyed that you like don't know where every bruise and freckle on their ass is, but then also the ICU nurse is like, well, suddenly I'm responsible for every vein in this patient's body, and you're telling me you don't know if they can walk or like. So
there's a video online. It's quite old. I couldn't reference it off the top of my head, but like it's a video. It's like ICU nurse versus ER nurse, and it's like these two little like bunny looking things, and they're like talking in like this like computerized voice, and basically they're going back and forth. Like the ICU nurse is talking about what was their blood sugar, and they're like, oh, it was 800. And they're like, did you do anything about it? No. Stuff like that. And it's like,
different priorities. I have 8 patients. They're all alive. I'm bringing one to you, like that.
And then also like they're intubated now. So who cares? Like to them, they're just not the priority. Like you're saying, it's just not.
Yeah. So like, while we can joke about the differences and like try to understand the priorities, there's no reason that you need to like be shitty to that nurse, because you need to recognize they're working in a very different environment than you are most likely. And the workflow is different. They're getting pressure from people to like get that patient off the floor, get them out of ED, get them up to the unit. But it's when, it's one thing, like I've talked to nurses from the ED that are perfectly pleasant, and they'll be like, I'm so sorry. It is crazy down here. Right. I'm not sure if they have any pressure ulcers, but like blah, 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 blah. This is what I do know. That's different than someone being like, I don't know. And we all get stressed, but
understandable. But there's a way to be like stressed and like also a pleasant human. than like just being an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, really, it's like the stuff you can't quantify, like the body language and like the tone of voice and like, which really, if you try to say like, hey, you know, like, I really don't appreciate the way you're speaking to me right now. Sometimes people are receptive to that. And sometimes people will be like 10 times more mean after you say that. So then people become like nervous about speaking up.
Right. But here's the problem. Normally, you know, if you've worked with those nurses for, 3 years, you can be like, whoa, who woke up on the wrong side of bed this morning?
For sure. You know? Like, are you okay? Like,
somebody who just got there and just started working there and it's like, doesn't even, they're so nervous to even like, go to the bathroom on their own. They're like, oh gosh, this person is mean and they have a bitch face and I don't know what to do about it and I just don't like them now.
Yeah.
They make me nervous.
Exactly. We need to not do this to like our nursing assistants and our x-ray techs and our residential physicians. Like, we always say we want to be treated respectfully by physicians, but we also need to be returning that. We need to, anyone we collaborate with, anyone we're interacting with, there needs to be a minimum level of professionalism. Like I could see myself maybe stepping over a line if like I see someone do something that hurts a patient or that is dangerous or willfully inappropriate, then I might be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? But those are rare, weird circumstances. I guess the point is that like these little acts of incivility are sometimes hard to explain. That one nurse who always like treats you shitty, but you can't explain why you think they feel that way about you.
Right. Or like, but like you think they're shitty, but then everyone else on the ship is like, oh no, her, I love her. Or everyone else is like,
yeah. And you're like,
I don't see that at all.
There's also like the super passive aggressive incivility of like, I won't look at you. I'm not asking you for help. And I've experienced this so much. And I just do a good job. And I'll help anyone as long as they're not straight up abusing me. But you always have that one person that like thinks that they're not being passive aggressive, but really you just see the body language and like it's exhausting. I get so tired of it. Like I'm already emotionally drained when I'm at work. I don't need to be drained on top of it by somebody who's just being kind of like mumbling shit under their breath or like
walking off and like you just hear them like, you just hear them say like everything like that you just said, but like the shitty tone, like they're mocking you and you're like, oh, cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
But,
So
I don't know. You just like saved somebody's life and you're like feeling so good about all the things you just did. And then you go get a report and then it's like tearing you down. You're like, oh, did you do this? No. Oh. Well,
and this can be something that is as small of a problem as like that one bad apple, which I've worked on units before where like most of the staff gets along pretty well. And then there's that like one person who totally kind of is like the vinegar in the fruit punch. And you try, you try to make efforts and sometimes people are really hard to work with. So sometimes it's an individual level. Sometimes it's the workplace. Sometimes it's like the culture of the unit. Sometimes it's like groups, when you get that like cliquey bullshit. Like you have like the mean girls and
then the burnouts and like, all that deal.
Yeah. And it can be from like department to department. It can be like service to service, like doctors against nurses, like physical therapists against nurses. Like it becomes this like adversarial like minefield. And I don't know about you, but like I don't want to work anywhere that's like that. So it's like, because then when you come into a workplace like that, you may be optimistic and like wanting to say like, I want to help create change, but it's really difficult as an individual to change an entire culture, whether that be like the unit, the department, the division, the hospital, whatever. So this becomes, I don't know. I always want to say like, do the best you can to change your space in a sense of like, try to be a good influence, do what you can to make positive change, speak up when you feel like, you have the ability to do so. But sometimes it's like, really, are you going to change an entire unit that has like nurses that have been there for 30 years that meet every new nurse that comes in and then wonder why they,
I know, like, why is the turnover so terrible here?
Yeah. And you can tell there are some units where they've had the same staff for
right now. Yep.
And my unit is like that in a lot of ways. We see a lot of staff leave because they like get advanced degrees or like move for family or like, their spouses get a residency and so they move across the country. Like we see that all the time. But, there are some
usually
units,
they're not leaving because they just would rather work somewhere else.
Right. And some units, that is the case. Some units you're like, oh my God, you guys just had like a mass exodus. Like every nurse on your unit just graduated. Like what happened?
Why is it every February you have no staff? Well,
yeah. There's a pattern. So really like we can talk about this in a lot of different ways and we can isolate, but really we need to think about first, the only person you can control is yourself, right? So like we need to find something within ourselves that helps keep us on this like straight and narrow. If we're not able to like change the culture around us, we're at least able to control the words that come out of our mouths and our body language. We can try to pay attention to what we're doing more. Because some people maybe don't realize when they're like sighing or like rolling their, I hope you would realize that you're doing that if you are, but maybe not. So I feel like we need to first think about ourselves, not only like how are we doing these things, but how do these things make us feel? Because I think when we tap into like how these things make us feel, we build that like compassion and that empathy, and that drives us, I think, sometimes to behave better. So you have a story. So I'm looking at the outline. You have a story. You think that it's going to be way too long, but is there a way that you can like distill it down or like give us like an essence of your story?
Okay. So my story starts when I started in the ICU. So like I said, I came from a respiratory floor. So I was, and when I was there, I've had charge nurse experience. I had precepting experience. So when I moved to the ICU, because of that, floor to unit incivility, I was like, okay, I don't want these girls to think like, I'm a floor nurse. So, they don't think I know anything. So I was like, when I go there, I'm just not going to say any of my past experience as far as precepting charge, how I've, dealt with a lot of codes, any of that. I'm not even going to bring it up. So I get there and I meet my preceptor, and she seems pretty cool, like off the bat. And then my first day, we had a situation where basically I was right and she was wrong. And I think that's kind of what escalated a lot of this, all the situations. But anyway, she was just one of those people. She was one of those ones that just has the attitude. Like the eye roll and the whole sighing and the whole like wants to know labs from 8 days ago. That is like her in a nutshell. So when she was precepting me, she'd make little comments, all the time, but she'd say things like, she would try to teach me things that I already knew. For example, like how to use the computer system, like how to use the charting system, how to like find stuff in the supply room, like shit that I know, or I shouldn't be working at this hospital because I've already worked here for about a year and a half. I need to know things like how to work the vent, how to turn a patient on a vent, like teach me like ICU stuff.
Yeah.
She would never teach me anything that was relevant. So there's that. And she'd always make little comments like she would never let me carry the phone because she literally said this, but she said, she's like, you can't carry the phone because these doctors don't want to talk to you because you don't know what you're doing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and then one time I was like, patient's family had asked me why we do this procedure called a mitral flip. And so they were asking me why they should get, or why getting this procedure would be better than them just getting a new heart. And so I was trying to tell them like why, pretty simple. It wasn't anything like in technical or anything. It was just, a simple answer. And so I guess she came in the last like bit of me saying that. And then we left the room and she was like, don't ever teach a patient anything without me being there because you don't know what you're talking about. Like,
whoa.
And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, it was a simple answer. I thought, I usually, things don't bother me a lot. So I usually can say something back, but she just like I think, like I said, this also probably escalated because I would say stuff back. I hesitate to use the word grooming, but it almost feels like sometimes when someone's bullying, like an actual bully, like they'll almost groom that person to like where they can say anything they want and they know they won't say anything back.
Right. They kind of like test the waters a little bit.
Exactly.
Push the boundaries a little bit.
Yep. So I feel like she was doing things, and it was like each time it was like a little worse because I would say something back and I wouldn't I wouldn't cap that boundary. Well, I guess like the icing on the cake was, or it's, you can call it, is one day we were in a patient's room that what happened was they were on bed rest after a procedure and they sat up, and sometimes when they're like fluid down and when you split them up, they can, have a change in fluids, and they like brady down, they get real sweaty, that whole thing.
Yep.
Well, one of the doctors happened to be in there, not really it was one of the intensivists. And so he sat them up and they had, vagal or had this response, whatever. And so he's not freaking out or anything. This is not an emergency situation. Like he was like, oh, maybe we should just place an Hotline just to, keep an eye on it and be safe. So we go get the line cart, and I also went to go get some Reglan for him because he was both nauseous. So I get the Reglan. Also, like this other doctor called me, and so I was like, I'm trying to be on the phone with this doctor, and then also like I'm in the room trying to push this Reglan, do all this stuff. Well, she is like standing on one side of the bed for me, and I'm standing on the other side of the bed, like getting ready to do these meds or whatever. Then my phone rings, I answer it, I like go to answer it, I put it under my like elbow in my ear, and I'm like trying to talk, and as soon as I like screwed the syringe into the port, the little hub, she like I said, she was on the opposite side of me. She like jumps over the patient's bed where she's like laying over their legs. And she grabs my hands and like throws my hands and like off of the syringe and the PICC line, and she like takes over and she just like slams in this Reglan, which she shouldn't do.
No, that's a slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then she's like, you need to learn how to push stuff faster, and just like takes the thing off and throws the syringe at me. And I was just like,
you're like, you need to learn your push rates.
I like in that moment, I was just like, first of all, bitch, did you just touch me? Like,
yeah, like you just lay hands on me,
but also
for a non-emergent
exactly,
situation.
like this is not anything like, okay, maybe we should probably, do things, a little quicker, but this is not, he is fine. This is not code. Like, why are you jumping over patients' beds right now? Like, anyway, this doctor that was sitting there, like his face, oh my gosh, he was just like, his jaw was literally like dropped open because he was like, oh my gosh, what did I just see happen?
Yeah. What's my part in this now?
I'm just like, she's, doing whatever. I'm frozen. He's frozen. I'm on the phone, and all of a sudden I just hear this, hello? Because I had forgotten I was on the phone, and I just hung up. Like, I didn't even know what I was doing.
You're like, point. I was just oh my God. Struck by my coworker.
So I had to like leave the room, and then I like called that doctor back, whatever. Anyway, she just like, it was just stuff like that she would always just do. And then on that particular day, she like, I'm like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I just went over to a little cubby that was on the farthest part of the unit, and I'm like, I'm just going to finish charting.
You're like, I need quiet time.
Yeah, like, I don't even need you right now. And then, so she comes over, and she like, well, this has probably been like an hour after all this stuff. She comes over, and she like hops up on the little counter, sees her little ass up there, like nothing just happened. And she looks at me and she goes, see, and here in the ICU, it's pretty busy, huh? And I was just like, if I could have been a cartoon, like steam would have been like barreling out of my ears. Like I would have been like whistling and like piping red.
Wait, what did she say?
She just hops up on the counter and she goes, see, it's really busy here in the ICU, isn't it?
Oh, as though to be like, see, you're struggling, of course, because it's so busy, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're like, actually, the only struggle I've had is interacting. Oh man.
So I turn to her and I'm just like, no, person's name. I can handle being busy, but what I cannot handle is you being a bitch. And she just looks like the look on her face that she got when she just realized that I called her that was incredible. But yeah, so then we went on and on.
Like pushed to a limit. Like, do you feel that was like kind of an explosion to just like having said nothing.
Not only is this what she did in there like uncalled for, but it was extremely unprofessional. Like,
right.
Why would you do that?
Right, for sure.
But this is also the girl that's known for just like calling you out and like basically in front of patients during bedside report, kind of telling them that you did things wrong or you know.
And we need to be really careful not to undermine each other in front of patients, because then they do question their safety. They don't know that, you know, this particular person is just like really disagreeable and is like verbally aggressive in front of patients, but like they take it as fact. And now all of a sudden that patient might be afraid for no reason. Like,
oh no. And then especially with people with that kind of, like, with an attitude like that, like they're so, like the attitude is so overbearing, and whatever the opinion is that they have, like it's really easy to push it onto them. Like versus them like making their own decision, if you will, like they're going to believe what that person is saying because, you know, they're so confident in saying that.
Right. Why wouldn't you? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that was your welcome to the unit.
Oh yeah. So this was like a date, like, you know, when she jumped over the patient's bed or whatever, that was like the last, like, that was like the end all be all of that whole orientation shit. But I was with her for like 3 weeks. So all this is like not very long at all before basically somebody found, like, everyone saw kind of what happened when we were exchanging words, because of course my body decided to cry, you know, when I'm trying to be all hard, like calling her.
Yeah, but like your frustration builds up.
All of the emotions. Yeah. It was just like, boom, this is how I'm going to like show that to the world with these tears. But yeah, so everyone saw that. And then they're the ones that actually told my boss. And then she was like, hey, you know, she pulled me in her office and was like, you know, talk to me about it. And then she ended up giving me a new preceptor. And I had to do all those 3 weeks over again anyway, because I literally learned nothing, but that's okay.
So did you get at least a better shake the second time around?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. But see, but then look, the same unit, the same skills that you wanted to learn, totally different experience because of the attitude of the person that was precepting you, right?
Dude, if I would have had to stay with her the entirety of of my orientation there, I was already planning on quitting. Like,
yeah, because like
I'm leaving. Like, this is so dumb. I hate this place. Like,
when you're brand new and it's already that bad, you're like, well, it probably ain't going to get better. Yep. Like, this isn't going to just go away. And that's just it. You worry about that, and you fall into a pattern where you become like a target for this person because they recognize that you're just going to like roll over, that they can get away with it. So,
and no one else like comes around to like, you know, socialize with you being a new person, because they also hate that person, like, because of, you know, the way they treat other people.
Right.
And don't know anyone else's like attitudes and how they, you know, anyone else on the unit. And it's just a bad deal.
And then also perhaps you could have like tempered your response a little bit if you had been in a culture where it felt safe and fair to be like, I really don't appreciate the way you're interacting with me, and I would really like to remind you that like I am a licensed professional, and while I have much to learn, what you're giving me is not what I need. And if you had whether it be the ability or the confidence or the safe space, or saying it and knowing that it's not going to suddenly become 10 times worse, because that's always the risk. Is that, oh, you don't like the way I'm doing it? Well, now I hate you even more.
Yeah.
So it can feel really difficult to advocate for yourself, and it feels terrible. You know it's coming. So like if you know you're going to be spending like weeks with this person, basically every time you put your scrubs on, you're like, here we go again. Gotta go work like
to work.
Yeah. And what does this do to your focus and your desire to learn and your desire to be fully present there? Like, this is actually like a huge issue. And you actually, you pulled an interesting statistic about this as well, about work absences.
Well, what's funny about it is like, not only is there a statistic right there, like in black and white, but that's exactly how I responded. Like after that, I called in my next free shift because I wasn't going to be there. And then the shifts that I was there, there was like another 1 or 2 shifts that when I did go, I would, say that I had to go do like modules or something, and I'd go like disappear into the
because you want to get away
library.
from that behavior.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like 12% of work absences are just because people are shitty to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I actually know personally a nurse who within the last few months switched hospitals that they were working at because they were treated so badly on orientation. And now that they're in a different environment with a different team, they're thriving. They've learned so much and they're doing so well. And it's just, it really does make a profound difference. And
and you don't want to ask that preceptor questions because you're afraid of how they're going to respond to you. Like,
right.
You don't want to,
and are you really giving your best care?
No, you're not, because, you don't want to, you just, I don't know. There's so many things that could be said about that, and how like patients do suffer from, shitty, preceptors and orientees relationships. But, I just,
oh God. And and that's like a whole other element to it, is like, it's one thing when you're getting treated shitty at the nurse's station, when they're doing it in front of patients, or when they're doing it while, like, think about how nervous you are in a new setting. You get the shaky hands, you feel clumsy, you feel awkward, you feel like you've got all these eyes on you. And now imagine their hostile eyes. What does that do for your hand coordination and your ability to like think smoothly and prioritize? When I get flustered, I forget things. So,
me too. And
and you have to run back and forth
or something. I just,
yeah. I'm like, oh God, I forgot to bring this. And oh, now I don't have this. And oh, this isn't stocked in the room. And then you end up looking like you don't know what you're doing because you have to like run all over the place to get things. Oh, hold on, I forgot something. I'll be right back. Well, now your patient is like, does she know what she's doing? Yes, I do. Yeah. I'm just nervous because I have this person on my ass.
Over my shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. And so, this is a big deal. And this causes people to leave jobs. This causes people to, not only that, but like it gets worse when the whole unit, like you were kind of saying, like this particular person, like everybody knows they do it. Some people are like, oh, that's just how they are. Other people are like the thing that I hear all the time about these like toxic personalities is people say like, oh, I just ignore it. I can't even deal with that anymore. And it's like, well, by not dealing with it, this monster is mutating unchecked. And then when someone does try to stand up to it, it's like, well, why do you have a problem with it? Nobody else has a problem with it. And then,
try to say something, then this, like,
and then it becomes about you, even though everybody feels that way. Or I shouldn't say everybody. Many people, feel that way.
The whole idea of like, which I kind of was also taught to believe that if you say, like, it's almost better to just be the bigger person and walk away than say anything about it. Like, no,
but then the question is, there are several questions. Does that person realize they're doing it? Does the person realize the effect that it's having? Some people are just like, I know people that they're not really happy in their personal life. They're kind of sour. They're not happy. They're stressed. Maybe they are sandwiched between responsibilities and they're exhausted. There are so many reasons why people bring these shitty attitudes to work. And sometimes we can give the benefit of the doubt. And, if it's someone that he doesn't usually act like this, you can be like, yo, what's the deal?
Yeah.
But if it's somebody that like, this is kind of, oh, they've worked here for 25 years and
they've always been like this.
And it's like, well, but really 25 years worth of nurses on this unit have dealt with this bullying behavior. So then it's like, where do we go from here? Like, what happens when you talk to leadership, you talk to management, you talk to other providers about these like bullying behaviors, and then you're like, well, are they going to do anything about it? Or did I just single myself out as a complainer or thin-skinned? Or like, it's interesting how we like throw it back instead of putting the responsibility on the person who's exhibiting the behaviors. We question, it's like that victim blaming, like, well, was she having a bad day? Or like, well, every day.
Right.
Every shift. Like, how do I know? And also, you know, I come into work and I know when I've got like a shitty attitude on, I usually am really the first like half hour of my shift. I'm kind of like, fuck life. I hate it. I want to go to bed. And then like I pick up the pace and like I'm good and my attitude is positive and I'm like, oh God, I'm so sorry. I was such a bitch during report. But when it's all the time and it's like your default setting, it's not just like, oh, Julie's having a bad day or Patty didn't get much sleep today. It's like this person just has a sour face. Yeah. And so I think, you know, one of the things that you've said in the outline, and I keep citing this because you did a great job with this. Hold on, I have to cough.
Oh, well, thanks. It just came to my brain.
Yeah. And actually, this stuff is really important because this is why I say that every nurse has something to contribute, because like I wouldn't have been able, I probably could have thought of some of this stuff, but I feel like when you have these things that either you experience or you've been educated about or whatever, you need to share it. So like, that's kind of the spirit of what we're doing here. But how do we go about like solving this problem? Like, what are some things that we can do to make it better?
Well, so, you know, the whole like, you know, just culture thing is a huge one. I don't know if you guys do use like the Swiss cheese model in your hospital. You know what I'm talking about there?
The Swiss cheese is that where like if enough mistakes line up, it can have like an incredibly negative effect.
Right. And then, so there should be a just culture. So anyone can report, you know, these, you know, anyone can report getting through the holes, if you would, so it doesn't reach the patient type of deal. Well, you know, if we take that same like thought of the just culture and say, okay, anyone who sees like somebody being bullied or something like some shitty attitude somewhere that someone's doing, you know, reporting it or saying something about it, you know, you won't be looked at as that complainer, or you won't be seen as that like, you know, person who just wants to tattle or, you know, thin-skinned or any of the other things that you can, you know, label a person as that wants to tell on somebody, if you will. You know, so, you know, just getting, you know, creating that culture. I really do think that as nursing as a whole, the whole like nurses eat your young thing, I think that's really going by the wayside. I don't know if it's like the age, the newer generation coming in and it's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. But I mean, there's still a bullying problem, you know, it's just, So.
I think, you know, I am heartened by seeing how many supportive nurses there are. So I don't really know because, you know, I've only worked in one state, in one hospital, and then clinicals and like a spattering of others. So I can't speak everywhere. I do think that there are more nurses that want to create a culture of collaboration and community, because this shit is hard and we can either pit ourselves against each other or we can try to work together to make this better. So I think
because not one person can know anything, like or know everything.
And I think that the digital age has changed a lot of that, and we can talk about that later, like nurse YouTubers and podcasters and educators and like, but yeah, this just culture, this idea of like, you're not going to get punished for calling out a potential error in a system or the way something's being done if your intention is to make it better for the patient or, you know, your staff.
So I'm not just tattling on, you know, Jessica over there because she is just mean all the time. Like I'm not going to be a tattle. Her. Exactly. Yeah. That whole thing. That's not what.
It's more like, well, I see this thing being done wrong consistently. And if this, and this all happened at the same time, it could hurt the patient. Or if this, and this happened all at the same time, it could hurt another nurse or something like that. So we need to be able to, like medication errors, you know, like sometimes we've had people that have said like, oh yeah, my tubing broke last night. And then another nurse is like, oh yeah, that happened to me like 3 days ago. Well, nobody complained about it, but suddenly maybe you just determined that there's like an error in that batch of product.
That lot of stuff. Yeah.
So we need to have, and obviously that's like an inanimate object. That's not what we're talking about.
Right. But still, it's still the same concept. Like, something's not right here. Let's bring to light.
This idea of like, this nurse keeps like pissing off patients and then they all want to leave AMA. Well, you shouldn't feel bad about reporting. Like, I'm seeing a pattern here. So we need to think about, do we already have examples of just culture on our units, and how do we spread that, or how do we
Right. Just being, first of all, being welcoming when new people come in, there's a big one. If you just like welcome people with open arms instead of just, being assholes to them off the bat, it helps like create like a safe place. And, even the newer people, when they come in, if they don't see something that's going right, they're a little bit more comfortable to say something when they see it.
Yeah, because you're not going to get screamed at the nurse's station because
if I say something, I'm going to get a bad assignment for 3 months.
Yeah, like you don't want that kind of retaliation. And also, we need to remember that on the other side of that, if we want this to be our culture, we need to recognize that if somebody says like, "Hey, like." You kind of were really, really mean to that nursing assistant. Like, maybe ease up a little bit. Like, she's really trying. You shouldn't feel like, you need to
They're jumping down your throat about it.
Get all defensive and like, would just be like, oh man, okay. Maybe
constructive
you don't have
criticism.
To say that person, but you have to be like, okay, am I doing this? Even if maybe they didn't tell me in the most constructive way, is what I'm doing being perceived? We need to be able to self-reflect. We can't just be like, well, I never do that. Really? You're human. Like, just evaluate. Yeah. Are you hangry? Did you have a fight with your husband and now you're a little pissed off and you're like being a bitch to everybody? Like, these things happen. We're people. Like, we're tired. But I think that it does need to be really this culture of like, we're not just tattling. We're not just like getting pissy at each other. Like, let's actually work to make this better. So I think that's a really important culture change that needs to happen if it's not already happening. And
go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just gonna tell you to take it again, take the floor.
Oh, okay. Well, back. So, along with this, thank you, Vanna. Back with this just culture. So, on my story, like, a couple of the other nurses on my unit are the ones who informed my boss about what was happening. And I don't even, honestly, to this day, I still don't know who the people were that reported it. But they reported it. They didn't get any type of like, ramifications. I'm not even sure if the girl, my quote unquote bully, knows who reported it or not. But so, they didn't get any, pushback. And I obviously got to get a new preceptor. Had they not said anything, I'm not really sure that I would have said anything myself. I think I probably just would have been like, you know what, I'm just going to stick it out until I get to go back to night shift then
I don't have to basically like be attached at the hip to this.
Exactly. Yeah.
God, what a way to just be like, I just got to get through the first 8 weeks. And that's your opportunity to like learn as much. Like, you literally have a built-in tutor for the unit at your
especially on my unit, when like the only reason that a night shifter would have to go to days for 8 more weeks, because that's when you learn how to settle hearts for the most part.
Yeah.
That probably would have been, going back to safe patient care, that would have been a terrible thing for me to have done, because I wouldn't have been able to learn a really good like set of skills to be able to settle a fresh heart from the OR.
Right. And these are literally matters of life and death. Like this, so you can't have your ability to learn and progress in what you need to be doing because someone is making you unable to focus or feeling like you can't do what you need to do to get better at your job. So that becomes really dangerous and really shitty, because then if this person, is precepting other nurses, how many other nurses are getting this same, shitty welcome wagon? This like, the welcome wagon is a Chuck's and somebody's already pissed on it. Let's I'm sorry, keep going.
So that's like, the thing that everyone hears, the just culture. Let's create it. Let's create a safe place. Let's create a good union. Okay. Well, that's, that's the fluff of it, I guess you could say. Here's really how you like beat this. So my boss, this person, that I speak of is actually still employed on my unit. She, her employment status is a little bit different, but she does still work shifts on the unit. And so she still has to be like dealt with now and then. However, what we've been told is, okay, if you have to create a paper trail. So even though like this just culture and everything that's created is like, a good thing, it's positive, if you see something, say something. Okay, well, you still have to document, just like what's the saying, Adrianne? What is it? If you didn't chart it, didn't happen.
Oh yeah. If it's not in the medical record, you did not do it.
Exactly. So if these actions are not on paper, who's to say they even happened?
Right.
Every place has a like a reporting system. Ours is called Quantros. We use RL Solutions. Do you guys have one of those?
We have like a reporting system where you can actually report like in civil or like inappropriate professional behavior.
Oh,
it's kind of this. I'm pretty sure that the system is like the same system we would use to like report an injury or something, but you would choose a different category. Instead of like an injury, you would choose like, like professional whatever. I need to look into that because I'm only like 80% certain that's how it goes.
Yeah, well, our reporting system is, like I said, it's Quantros, and basically you go in, and it's a lot easier than RL Solutions. This thing took forever to fill out, but you just go in and you put. The thing about it is, like, I think there's an option where you can put like but you don't have to include like a patient SIN number because it's really, to report, near misses or, things that could fall and stuff like that. But there is, I think, a section where you can just not include patient information, but you can go in there and you can, write what happened basically and just like report it. And that's it. It goes to like, risk management if needs to, and then it goes to your manager. So then those incidences are documented. Okay. To as little as, this person keeps doing this and it makes me feel this way, to, this person jumped over the bed, grabbed my hands and pushed me away from the patient. Like things that are like, happening to you that are not professional. Right. Even like with doctors, there's been several doctors we've had to write up. I mean, I don't want to say several, like we work in a bad facility or anything, but sometimes doctors have their little like attitudes and they just need to be checked sometimes. But, if you don't create the documentation of this stuff happening, they can't really do anything about it because, right. I mean, most of the time you can't just fire somebody for no reason.
Right. And you can't just say, the staff said it's been like this forever. Well, yeah. But nobody's
really has it. But like, I don't know.
They've worked here 10 years. They've worked here 15 years. They've worked here 4 years. And like, literally we've never heard anybody say anything. And, then it's difficult because you don't want to feel like a tattletale, but this is why you need to be as objective as you can, when giving report, like person said this to me, you can't be like, well, she was being a total bitch. And this is what, right. Like you do need to make your own, like you're writing a legal document. Like,
exactly. Like you're writing up a shift report, like a note that's like, you can't chart in like, the Epic or, whatever charting system you use. We use Cerner, but you just like your little note and, whatever the patient said, if they're about to leave AMA right. and you quote why, just like that.
Exactly. And this
and it can be
not
anonymous.
only, yeah. And you can, and if you choose not to do it anonymously, you at least want to make sure you're maintaining your integrity. I mean, you want to maintain your integrity, even if you're anonymous, but I guess the point is that, when I believe that when you go toe to toe with someone that behaves inappropriately, whether it be through proper channels like reporting or even in a discussion, you need to, it's kind of like, I mean, what does Michelle Obama say? When they go low, we go high. You need to remember to maintain your own integrity. And what I mean is you can call me every name in the book, but when it goes on record, I will be saying in the manager's office that I never raised my voice. I never called you a name. Like that's my personal code. And that to me is like how you maintain your integrity and your credibility as well. Because if you're having a conflict with someone someone, and the minute they step into the manager's office, they're screaming and flailing, and they have lost some credibility. So I think that when you report, you need to be objective and you need to maintain, I keep saying it, but like maintain your integrity. Would you agree? Like,
yeah.
Because I
like
think
you can't you can't just be whiny and using like all sorts of language in there, fill in all sorts of types of ways when you're writing these reports. Like, take a minute. Don't do it as soon as it happens.
You don't want to look like a loose cannon, basically.
And then like maybe like write it out like in a Word document, just like word vomit on it, and then like take it and read it over, and then say, okay, now I'm ready to actually write what's important. Because sometimes you get caught up on stuff that's not really that important.
And I've done that before with either like incidents that didn't feel right to me, or like if there was a med error, like, because if I get subpoenaed about this in 2 years, I'm not going to fucking remember what happened. So I have like a little Post-it note somewhere in my journal that says like, well, this happened. This is what, I mean, I joke, but yeah, you really need to make sure that these things are appropriately documented in ways that will aid your argument rather than hurt your argument. Because it's true. A manager cannot just can somebody because like, well, the whole staff hates you and they say you're a bitch. Like, that's never going to happen. And thank God, because that also means that you're not going to be fired just because there's like maybe a cliquey group of bitches that doesn't like you.
Yeah.
So, exactly. I mean, but again, like, no matter how small it may seem, if it's part of a trend, you need to talk about it. You need to, and that's why I tell people, like, don't just tell your boss, like in passing, like you stop in their office and say like, hey, this happened. Send them an email, because it doesn't have to be long, but this way it's documented. If you're reporting things and your leadership is not doing anything about it, you can say, in my sent inbox or my sent box in my email, I have 5 messages that, before this huge incident blew up, I tried to warn you. So yeah, that paper trail I think can be really important, and also can, I think that now I'm stumbling over my words, but yeah, basically that's I think the biggest point we can make is that you need to make sure that somebody knows.
Yep. And just so, if it happens, just, write it up, whatever. And then, see, the next point I have on here is research your facilities policies in place that deal with bullying. So the thing about it is I don't really know if there is a lot of places that have policies that have to deal with bullying, because we're freaking adults, man. Like, we shouldn't have to have policies for it. But
that's a good question. I hear an evidence-based project here.
Hey.
But yeah, that's a good question. Do hospitals have things in place?
I know we don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Per se.
I don't think we do, because, like you said, when you have a bunch of adults, you assume they behave like adults.
Like, we should have a zero bullying tolerance policy, like an elementary school would.
Yeah.
But should we? I don't know, because then we are adults, and sometimes we can throw things out of proportion and take things, there's got to be some type of way that you can make a policy that is actually effective against what it needs to be effective for, and not just like all of the things,
So what you did put on here that is very valid is you can say like one of the things you wrote down was put together a council to put a policy in place. Well, my hospital has a lot of shared governance committees. These are things that could be discussed there. We have unit-based committees. So even if we don't have hospital-wide policies, we often are like pioneers of certain things. And then if we do a good job and like upper management sniffs around and sees we're doing something that's working, they can sometimes like overflow it into other units and say, hey, try this. So I don't think people should automatically dismiss like, oh, well, we don't have a committee for that. Do some talking around. This is an opportunity for a really good looking project on your resume. Like, I helped create an anti-bullying program.
So this is kind of funny, but we have one of the UPC, Unit Practice Council, that I'm on. There's like 4 of us, but, nonetheless, there was a one time where we had a large influx of like new nurses come in, and, the whole like idea of this whole incivility was coming up, and like, oh, well, how can we make it to where we don't make each other feel like that? And And I just, out of being funny, I was just like, how about we just not be assholes? And I jokingly called it the Don't Be an Asshole campaign. When I was going to put like a donkey in the bathrooms and like, don't be one of these. But anyway, basically like the whole, like everything we were talking about, if you have a resting bitch face, you know it. And if you don't know it, your friend knows it. Please say something to them. Like,
yeah.
And then maybe you can just be conscious of that bitch face and just say, okay, maybe I should just loosen it up a little bit. Because I was like, I can go around this table. I know there's only, 3 or 4 of us, but I can tell you every single thing each one of you does that would be intimidating to a person.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily to me because I know you, but, and it's like that on the whole unit. There's something that everyone does that could be intimidating to somebody else.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that. Maybe if you see it, just tell your friends, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. Or, hey, maybe you roll your eyes a little too much. Like, maybe you shouldn't, just.
Mm-hmm. And, we need to remember it's that whole, like, well, they've forgotten what it's like to be a student. That's one thing I hear a lot. And it's like, well, some of us do. But did you, or, were you a dick? Like,
are you trying to forget what it was like because it was that fucking bad?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably what it was.
And, some people do have that attitude of like, well, I did it. They can do it too. Well, it's like, well,
no,
that's a shitty attitude. Like, so, if you, had a shitty attitude, like everybody else should be okay with that as well. No, I don't think so. I think that, it's good to find out ways that you can be formally involved. And if there's already a policy in place, then maybe it's time to find ways to remind people of what that policy is, in non-passive aggressive ways. Like, don't print it out and tape it to every bathroom.
Oh God, those are so funny. That could be a form of bullying, but those signs do happen to be funny every now and then.
Yeah, once in a while. But also when somebody like keeps putting up signs and that they're like bitching about one particular person, it becomes passive aggressive really, really quick.
Whoever's blue lunchbox keeps getting put in this fridge needs to stop. Take it out.
Yes, exactly. Oh. And it could be that passive, but it's like, oh, well, everybody knows that that's Vicky's blue lunchbox.
So-and-so, yeah. Uh-huh.
Sorry to all the Vickies in the world. I'm sure your lunchboxes are just fine. So
they're all going to go get green ones now.
You have yeah, exactly. The next thing that you have on the list actually is something that I have experienced. And while it did not, I just want to give a little. So you have on here, stand up for yourself. Mm-hmm. And you say that like sometimes we once people know there are boundaries, they don't push them. Like once you dig your heels into the sand, they don't push so hard. There may be testing, like we kind of talked about, there may be pushing the limits, testing you out, kind of like grooming you to see how much they can, how much they can make you do or not do. But I've had this experience, over the course of years. There was a person that I worked with that they were aggressive to everyone, passive aggressive, and really difficult to work with. And everybody kind of steered clear. And excuse me, all of a sudden I have this tickle in my throat that I can't get rid of.
I know, you're good.
But this person, I kind of had a breaking point with them. And there was a particular day that I just was like, you know what? I can't do it anymore. Stop taking it to extremes. You're being dramatic. Everything is fine. Like, let's just keep moving on. And that person got very upset. And since then, I have not had the same relationship with them. They don't speak to me. They don't look at me. They don't ask for help. They're petty. I'm sure they whisper behind my back. Eye rolling, like it's very different. And on one hand, I'm like, well, that just made my life a lot easier because I don't.
Well, how was your relationship before? I mean, it doesn't sound like it was the greatest. But...
No, but it was working. It was amicable. Okay. It was workable. Fine. Like, yeah, like I kind of was doing what everybody else was doing, just like riding the waves and like. If that person got a little snippy, I would just be like, whatever, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
But people now say like, well, what happened? And I say, well, I just stopped dealing with their bullshit and I just called them out on it. And now they don't like me. And they don't want to interact with me anymore because, and I think that's kind of what I did. Maybe I didn't do it in the most constructive way, but I got to a breaking point. I got to a point where I just couldn't listen to it anymore. And I said, no, we're done. And now that person is like, I can't talk to them. Well, okay, cool. If all you can say to me is negative, then no, you can't talk to me. I will still help that person. I will do a good job. I will not ever sabotage, backstab, or retaliate, but I will not put up with that shit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to encourage other people within their comfort zones and professional boundaries that they not take shit either. So,
well, and the thing is,
my experience,
even if you do have stuff like that, like this is not, you don't have to be friends with everyone you work with. Like,
true. I mean, but you have to be, you have to be professional.
But you do, you can't just be at work all the time, like hearing shit and like dramatic and, oh my gosh, can you shut up? Like, that also too, like, kind of creates a bad, more like a undesirable workplace. So I mean, you have to stand in whether you're being bullied or like you can't eat. Someone is just on your last damn nerve, and if you hear their voice one more time, you might scream.
Yeah,
but like you just have to stand up for yourself. Like nothing is ever going to change. And like it all starts with you.
Exactly. And I think that you need to maybe have some like pre-loaded phrases in your head of like, because when you get flustered or you're upset or you're emotionally charged or you're feeling bullied, maybe your words will not come to you as easily. So, I've had other nurses say, you can say, I don't appreciate the way you're speaking to me right now.
Right.
I am willing to help you, but I ask that this changes. So you can say that and totally be within your rights. And if that person then flies off the handle, well, then clearly that was a problem that existed regardless of what you just said. Like they're flying off the handle.
Right.
If this is something where you don't feel you can do this without retaliation, then oftentimes, this is real. Like you want to make sure, because not everybody works in happy little small town hospital. Like I have, I knew someone who worked in a very large city at in an unfriendly neighborhood. And one day they pissed somebody off and they got their tires slashed.
Oh, shit.
I mean, this is an extreme. No, this was an employee. This was a very extreme circumstance. This was many, many years ago. This was not where I worked. This was not in Iowa. This was in a very different place. But
I bet you it was Oakland, California.
I don't know exactly where it was, but I will just say it was. So there are times when legitimately maybe you don't feel empowered to say something directly to that person, because while we want nurses to be like these honorable, respected people, sometimes people make questionable decisions. So if that is the case, oftentimes, like I know my institution has like an anonymous kind of like reporting line, not only for like people can use that, like if you see someone diverting controlled substances or like if somebody is like doing things that are unsafe or like abusing people, like there are hotlines you can call and say, hey, this is a problem on my unit. Can you maybe have somebody take a look at it? And those things exist. So,
little voice changer there.
A little side talk with my hand up in front of my face. Like, can you go check this out? Because maybe you don't feel safe doing it, or maybe you are the new person on the unit and you don't want to be singled out because it's a culture thing and not just a one person thing.
Or maybe you're just not that person. Like you don't have that. There are people. I happen to be a person that doesn't usually mind saying stuff to people, but there are people out there that like would literally rather die than stand up to somebody. Like they're just like, no.
I can do it when it matters, but then I immediately need to go to like have the nervous shit somewhere after.
I need to say it now.
I'll do it, but
oh my gosh. So let's talk about nervous foods for just a second. Why is every single fucking time I go to Hobby Lobby, this is not a joke. Every time I go to Hobby Lobby, I have to have nervous soup. Why am I nervous at Hobby Lobby?
I don't know. Maybe worried about their like their employee.
I don't know. Every time, yeah. And then I get a patient like that's coming in. I'm like, I'm not even nervous. They're coming in. I'm like, I have to pee. I don't know. I have to pee right now. I gotta go.
That happens. Like if I know an admission's coming, even if I know that my bladder's empty, I'm like, oh my god, what if I get stuck in there for like an hour?
Like, yeah, and I'm not even nervous. Like, I get it. It's like my bladder is, but I'm not.
Shit that happens to nurses' brain. But yeah, so the thing is, and you put this, I'm kind of moving along. I'm so guided by this outline. I love it so much because I totally like at the end of the day, all you have is you. And so you have to protect yourself. And whether that means protecting yourself from a bully or protecting your unit from like the slide into this culture. But you have some great suggestions for people who really have a hard time standing up in these circumstances. So will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. But these are kind of all over the internet. You can how to stand up to somebody, Google it, but practice in the mirror. I know this is really silly, but even like when you're in, public speaking class in college, they'd be like, just practice in front of a mirror, and that way you're not so nervous. Okay. Well, it helps because like you always are subconscious about your face, how you like move your face and like how you're standing and like the way you move with your words and stuff, like all of those things. And like eye contact with somebody, if you're practicing in the mirror, you can like see how you're moving with your words and like how your face looks, and like you can make eye contact with yourself, but it's like still practicing that like whole, I'm talking to another person looking back at me type deal. So it really does help. I mean, if you're like subconscious about how you're going to sound or look while saying it or whatever, you practice in the mirror. Write them a note, little cute little, you can fold it up cute if you want. But write them a note and tell them how you feel. Maybe they'll get they might just be like, oh, what is this stupid shit, and crumple up and throw it in the trash. But they also might be like, oh,
you've planted the seed. Yeah. You've planted the seed there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Role play with another person. This is what I think is actually the best, because that other person can throw things at you, not literally, but like, but like they can feed like things that you might expect that person to say. Practice. Yep. So I think that's actually probably the best one. Bring a friend for support. Have the conversation in the manager's office. Hopefully a controlled one. There was a girl we used to work with that every time she would have problems, she was like, oh, come on, let's just go in the office. And it was so funny to watch her do it. But like you were saying earlier, that person is always, they're losing credibility when you start acting like some type of way. This is not the Jerry Springer show. Right. A controlled conversation. Yeah, for sure. But, definitely like how the manager can play some type of like a mediator, if you will, in the conversation. So there's that. Do you got anything else, like practice how to stand up to someone? I mean, I think that this is something that like over time we get better at. It's really difficult when you're the new person on the unit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely. I think that if you're in a situation where you're the new person, seek out those allies, seek out the people that stand up for you, or that seem to be really helpful when you ask them questions, or that like smile at you reassuringly when they notice that you've just had an interaction that maybe didn't leave you feeling so great. I think that you need to seek out those leaders that actually can counteract, and I don't mean counteract like that can actually like approach the bully for you, but I mean like, so you can have some positive experiences and create some allies that, have your back, so that when you go into work, you don't feel like you're walking into a lion's den. We also, you do say in here as well, like some things we need to kind of temper. We need to kind of like try not to let everything get to us. Mm-hmm. But, having a thick skin is good just for life in general. But I think that we need to recognize when it's not about us being necessarily too sensitive, but it really is a problem. Or maybe we're not alone. It's the same person over and over and over. Right. We're noticing that this problem. Mm-hmm. Right. And oftentimes, even as you start to learn and grow, they don't treat you any differently. So it's not like, oh, they treated you like this because you didn't know anything and you needed tough love. No, they're still doing this. So it's recognizing this and knowing that up to a point, just try to let it
try not to take it home with you. Try not to let it eat you up when you're getting ready for work. And you know, if you're having difficulty dealing with this, I'm never going to tell someone not to seek counseling, support, peer mediation, whatever it is that's going to make you feel better, because this is your job. This is your life. This is your livelihood. This is how you put food on your table.
You spend a majority of the time with these people.
Yeah. You know, so don't let them fuck with your ability to live your life.
Exactly.
So yeah. And you have some quotes in here, and I do love the quotes you've chosen and the people you've chosen them from. Will you share?
I just love these 5. These are like my 5 life ones.
These are great.
A lion does not concern himself with the opinions of sheep. Basically, you know, if you're a lion, why do you care what other people think of you? It doesn't matter. It does not matter.
If you're taking care of business, that's right. You know,
it doesn't matter. Don't let people live free in your head. And I actually quoted, what's this person's name? Esther Lederer. I had to Google that one, but my grandma is actually the one who always says this.
I like that.
You know,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's similar to a quote that I heard where someone said, "I will not let you take my sunshine." Mm-hmm. It's that same concept. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, why are you letting somebody's words and actions live in your brain for no reason? Like they're not doing you any good. They're just there, and they're taking up brain space. Like, just get them out of your head.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fill it with someone good.
Yeah.
With someone else.
Exactly. Maybe get a hobby. I don't know.
Yeah.
No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Obviously, Eleanor Roosevelt said that. That is a hard one, though, to sometimes, you know, feel, because people say stuff about you. You know, sometimes it just gets to you, and, you know, but you're the one who lets it get to you. You are the one who lets those words sink in and hurt you. I mean, if you just like reflect them, they're not going to get to you.
Right.
This next one is like one of my faves. You can be the sweetest, most juiciest peach in the world, but there's always someone who doesn't like peaches.
I love that.
Oh, so true.
I recently, I hate to call it out again, but I recently had someone leave an iTunes comment that they didn't like my voice. And
you have like a good voice, though.
Well, thank you. But you know what? Here's the thing.
Everyone says that, though. Everyone says you have a great voice, with that one person.
Yeah. And so, but you know what? The thing is that that's totally subjective. There are people that are on, like, there are newscasters and like radio personalities that I hate listening to. And that doesn't mean that millions of people don't love them, but not everybody likes peaches. That's a great one. I need to put that in my personal, my personal ammunition. I need that. So thank you for that.
When someone's saying something bad about you, just like, well, you know what? Not everyone likes peaches, so it's fine.
That's great. Oh my God.
And then obviously this next one's pretty famous. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Marianne Williamson. So, I mean, I think we all kind of let that one get to us a lot. Like all these things, like, you know, even like magazines, what people say, things on the TV, you know, all of this stuff, like, who are we not to be that person that we want to be? Well, I mean, you can do anything you want. Like, you can be anything you want. Just go out and do it and be it. So if you want to be like, you know, the bomb.com nurse on the unit, then be it. Don't let, you know, whatever people are saying stop you from doing that.
Right. One of the mottos that I live by is the antidote to worry is positive action. Mm-hmm. So if something's bothering you, if there's something you don't like, make action to change it. And if you're just fine with it, then fuck the haters. Like, it's okay.
Fuck the haters.
And I think, and then you also have something you wrote, you said that you didn't have anything like good to say on this particular topic, but protecting your reputation on the job. We did kind of talk about that. Make sure that you're tempering your responses. Maintain your credibility. Like, keep integrity in your word. Like, don't do the things that you complain about, like that kind of stuff. Right. I think that
don't be the one that's gossiping. I mean, everyone does it. I know that's terrible to say, but I mean, everyone has said a few things, like I said, off color that you probably should have said, but just
But when you realize it, if you have, like, if you're talking shit and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I did it again. What's stopping you from saying among your friends that you're shit talking with, oh, you know what? Actually, that's not fair.
If you're talking shit, try this on for size, because this is something that I kind of do that it's actually been noticed. If you're talking shit, maybe like before you start doing that, or like even after you caught yourself doing it, maybe try to say something positive about that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, so for every terrible thing, maybe you should note something positive.
Or try to break that shit up. Say, guys, okay, I think that's enough with the hate fest. Like, let's do let's do something positive. Like, let's do something else. Let's move our attention.
Like, yeah, you know what? She might never label her lines, and I know that's annoying, but you know, hey, like, she always leaves the patient's beds like really, really nice and tidy. Yeah. I mean, you know, and then just like deflect it. It's deflected.
Or if someone's bitching about something, say, hey, you know, have you thought about talking to them about it? Encourage people to take those positive roads. It's like, you know, these changes in behaviors are not like one day we make a static decision, we flip a switch and then we never do it again. These are practices. These are things that we, just like our nursing practice, we get better with it the more we do it. So, yeah. And you bring up a very good point at the end of our list of very important topics. And that is, sometimes all of the things we're talking about don't work. Sometimes it is so intense that going to your boss, talking to them face to face, calling like sometimes this shit does not help, and it puts you in a position where maybe your well-being is at stake. So what do you say to that?
If it is that bad, okay, and I mean, everyone's different in how they take things and how they, you know, can brush things off. But if it's that bad, especially to the point where you're like gonna harm yourself, okay, don't do that. Maybe just find a new job. Like if it's that bad, you're like, I don't even know how I could fix this, or no one's listening. Even if you have taken the step to, like, you know, talk about it, report it, whatever, and literally no one's doing anything about it, then just for your own well-being, like, remember, at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. Like, go find yourself a new job. Like, it's okay. No, that's the beauty of nursing. Like, you're not stuck in the same place. You can go find a different job. And, you know, even in the same hospital, or it's a different hospital, or even if in a different, like, whole, like, new area of nursing, like, go find something else that's going to make you happy and not going to, like, where you can bring home the baggage from your work day.
And, you know, the friend that I cited, it was difficult to make that transition. They made that transition while they were still a very new nurse, and it can be very scary. But had they not,
like, I got to go put my 2 weeks in.
Right. But had they not taken that risk, think about what it would have cost that nurse to just say, well, I'm new. This is just how it is, you know? And, you know, I did a quick Google search here about just like crisis lines, and there is the National Alliance for Mental Health. And so I'll put that in there. And if you know someone who is struggling with this and you see them not coping well,
please help them.
Please help them. Please reach out to them. This shit is scary. And when you're in it, even though other people may look at it and say, grow thicker skin, like it's not that big a deal, it is to that person. It is to that person. And when it's repeated and prolonged, it takes a toll on us. So I want to encourage people not to just sit on this and be like, maybe it'll go away. It won't go away. So do the things to protect yourself and to protect your practice. Because if you're feeling like this at work, you don't want to make a mistake and put your license at risk. Right. Yeah. Protect your patients, protect yourself. Right. Because the 2 nurses that are in my pod that could potentially help me hate me, and I'm afraid to ask, and I don't trust that they, you know, it's like,
but then I called and I still got yelled at, and
but
I can't do anything right. This is stupid. I'm stupid. Like, it's just a spiral.
Yeah. So I think that we all have a responsibility to make sure that we are speaking up when we feel safe to do so, and taking action, and not just allowing things to fester and grow and get worse. And then, you know, and then people, when they've had enough, they just start leaving. And then, and then you have a whole new generation of people, that don't know what caused the first batch to leave.
So that same article that I sent you about, like some stats on, workplace violence and how it affects facilities. It says unaddressed interpersonal workplace violence behaviors leading to employee to terminate the employment potentially can cost healthcare organizations $22,000 to $64,000 per replacement.
Per person. Yeah. Like not just, yeah. So this adds up. And, a lot of us probably know someone that have left a job or left a position or maybe didn't take it. Like I know people that have turned down positions they wanted because of who they would have been working with. And that's really unfortunate because then that's like your career is being guided by this kind of behavior. So, I'm also, you've included some great articles that I want to include. I'll put those in the show notes. I think that this is valuable information and I'm glad that we're talking about this because this is one of those things that by myself talking about this, I don't feel qualified, even though I've been a victim of it. And I've been a shit talker, I'm a gossiper. I work every single day not to do it. But it's a conscious
human. I mean, I don't think it's a nurse thing. It's a human thing,
It is. We all love our reality TV to an extent. I mean,
we love a good drama.
And you included a link for a video from Nurse Liz, who I love. I love Nurse Liz's video. She is now a nurse practitioner. She's on YouTube and she has some great tips on handling bullying and how to work on that, how to fix it. So I'm going to include all of these in the show notes so that people can go through and look at these things. Wow. This is such a big topic. And I'm sure that we could probably talk for days and days about all the different little nuances of things. But I think this is a great springboard. This is a great place to start from. And I think this also maybe gives people the empowerment to think about these behaviors in themselves.
How to deal with it. It's kind of almost, I kind of think about it as like the Me Too movement, how that whole movement, it was just about maybe if everyone just shares their story, then awareness, can be brought. So,
and actually
that's kind of like,
it's interesting that you bring that up because that's like the entire premise of this podcast. The whole reason I started this and started putting myself out there and talking about these things is because I would have these weird feelings or thoughts or things that I was worried about. And then I'd get the courage to mention them to someone and I'd have 5 nurses be like, oh yeah, dude, me too. Why the fuck did nobody tell me? Why did nobody tell me that you're
and it's like you think if you're in a situation where you feel like you're being bullied or feel like it's the instability is so much you almost kind of feel like you're the only one. You are not the only one. I can promise you every single person. I cannot think of a single person who has said, no, I've never experienced that in my life. Because if they've said that, they're a damn lie.
Or they're oblivious.
So, exactly. So yeah, that you can talk to and they'll know and what you're feeling and
So yeah, and I encourage everyone to take this information, use it as a force for good, stand up for people, try to do all of these things that we've kind of talked about because it's really down to individual action. We talk about how we can't single-handedly change culture, but we can be a hand that is changing culture.
But also the hospital is not going to protect you 100% in this sense.
Right. And so that's where it comes into play of making sure that you're protecting your integrity and that you're using the channels in place to report things appropriately and that you're not just going rogue and being that
willy-nilly and just
slash that nurse's tires. Don't
slash any tires, please.
Please don't ever. Don't do anything illegal to get back at people. And, just in general, I think that if we are talking about this and making it aware, if someone who is a chronic bullier hears a group of 5 or 6 nurses in the break room talking about all of their anti-bullying measures, well, maybe that person's going to think a little differently about how they're behaving if they know that their behavior is not appreciated or tolerated. So, there's so much, but I hope we did it justice. I think
great to surface at least.
Yes. And you have brought amazing information to this. I literally just crawled my ass out of bed to have this discussion. you. And I am literally about to crawl back into bed so that I can get
sounds perfect.
This is why it's great to have like my crash bed in my little like studio room, because then I literally I don't have to let the dog know I'm awake. I can just fall back into bed and it'll be fine. So is there anything else you'd like to say, or like, do you have any social media or anything that you want to promote or anything?
I mean, I have social media, but I mean, it's not anything like super great. I mean, it's just my own personal social media. It's not something that anyone want to visit. Sure. But
well, you've got the mic. If there's anything else you want to tell people before we wrap this train up.
I think we've done a pretty good job.
We've covered it all.
We've conquered the world. No, I'm just kidding. We haven't.
We've at least conquered some of our fears in discussing this, because I know this is something that I was nervous about, but you've made it very easy. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, if you want to catch more content, I encourage you to go over to nursinguncensored.com. We got the vlog. We got the blog. We got episodes, merch, a whole bunch of other things. So
actually, I just stumbled upon your YouTube channel, and there's a bunch more like vlog style videos on there that aren't on the podcast. So
yes, my crazy vlogging. Oh my gosh. I both love to vlog, and also I'm like, people are totally seeing me with like no makeup, like driving to the grocery store, talking about nursing stuff. But every time, this is funny, I'm not like blowing up, but like every time I release a video, I get like one new subscriber. So I see you guys. I see you.
Yeah. Well, keep on going, because, growth on YouTube is exponential. So
yes, that's awesome. So thank you so much for your support. I'm sure we will talk again soon. Please keep in touch. And
I will.
All right. All that's left to say is happy nursing, everybody.
Yes. Happy nursing.
Here at Nursing Uncensored, we may be, uncensored, but we're not unfiltered. Protected health information has been changed and concealed to comply with HIPAA. The things we talk about are from years of experience with thousands of patients, things we've read, stories we've heard. If you think we're talking about you, we're not. Also, we're real nurses here to provide helpful and accurate information, but don't take anything we say as fact without doing your own research. Refer to your state's Board of Nursing, Practice Acts, and your institution's policies and procedures if you have questions about your practice. Lastly, our very strong opinions are ours alone and do not reflect those of our employers, educational, or professional institutions. Thanks for listening, and happy nursing, folks.